Yeah, I knew when his first guest, when the Democrats' audio went out, I'm like, oh no, we're going to go right to the Republican talking points and just stay there. Who is this guy? Who's the senator from North Dakota?
Yeah.
Okay. Just all the Trump talking points about the election. He has every right to do this and blah, blah, blah. But he literally, this one I couldn't believe went unaddressed. He said, well, Trump has more evidence than Bob Mueller did.
Oh my God.
Trump has more evidence of voter fraud than Bob Mueller. It just went nothing. Chuck Todd, nothing. Just went by.
Nothing.
Right.
Well, and the sad part was the actual news yesterday was the Republican senator said, well, Biden probably won.
Probably.
And so there should probably be a transition. And so actually he goes on TV, says all these insane talking points, talks about, how Obama spied on the Trump campaign.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe this is all justified. Yeah. So maybe this is all justified. None of that sticks with anybody. It certainly didn't stick with Chuck Todd. And instead, we're supposed to give a Republican credit for 3 weeks later saying, well, 6 million votes, I guess he won. Look, here's what's so scary, and you kind of just mentioned it. So the legal maneuver is a joke, and it's dangerous, and it's useless, and it's not going anywhere. And in one sense, we can, as Lawrence said, we can kind of take credit that it's going to fail. But what if this had just been Michigan? What if Biden won Michigan by 5,000 votes?
Right.
Does anybody think the Republican Party would not right now be in the process of stealing that election? We would be on the precipice of a civil war because you would have the entire Republican Party working to throw out legitimate black votes in Detroit because they just want this. Mm-hmm. So yes, Rudy Giuliani is leaking oil on the side of his head and everything. And yes, they just threw that QAnon lawyer under the bus over the weekend. But if the circumstances were slightly different, this democracy would be on the edge of collapse.
Yeah.
It just would.
Yeah.
And that's the scary thing. And one real quick, does anyone really think the Republican Party is going to return anytime soon to rationally accepting election results?
No.
I don't.
No.
This is the norm.
But that's, like you say, this is the both sides access journalism that has driven you and I crazy for years, is that he says they spied on the Trump campaign and there's more evidence of vote fraud than Mueller had. And nothing. No pushback, no fact check. It's just both sides are, everybody has okay. Bob Mueller had a mountain of evidence, including 10 overwhelming counts of obstruction, right? It is only the rule that you can't, indict a sitting president.
He sent people to jail.
Yeah. And tons of collusion. Obviously, because of the obstruction, they couldn't get to the underlying cause of criminal conspiracy. But to let that just sit there, like, oh, well, and first of all, go, oh, really? What evidence of vote fraud? That's what all these court cases, as laughable as they are, Eric, they've presented exactly 0 instances of any vote fraud, right?
You read some of these rulings from the judges. They're amazing. We even talked about this a week ago. It's gotten worse in the last week. Judges are just like, leave me, like, we have important business to do in this court. Well, and incredibly, the President of the United States doesn't qualify as important work right now. Leave us alone.
This one in Pennsylvania, right? The court has been presented with strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations that weren't tied to the actual complaint nor supported by evidence. In the United States of America, this cannot justify the disenfranchisement of a single voter, let alone all the voters of its 6th most populated state. Right? The Trump campaign had complained election officials in Democratic leading counties had done a better job than officials in Republican leading counties of advising voters when they made a mistake on their mail-in ballots, and argued that this amounted to an equal protection violation. The judge said that argument is rubbish. It's like, because Republicans suck at their job, we should throw out everyone's votes in Michigan. Because it's right. You don't have to be a lawyer to go, that's insane.
And, it wasn't that long ago that frivolous lawsuits was a hallmark of the Republican Party. That was one of their rallying cries. That was in their platform. We've got to reform the legal system. We've got too many joke lawsuits. And here we are. And these judges, Republican and Democrat judges, are just laughing them out of court in a way we've never seen before.
But, Eric, I almost feel like going to your point about the media, the way they covered this Michigan thing, it's covered. Trump failed to convince Michigan lawmakers in a White House meeting that Joe Biden fraudulently won the election in their state. They said we've not been made aware of any information that would change the outcome of the election in Michigan. As legislative leaders, we will follow the law and follow the normal process regarding Michigan's electors. So I feel like the media's like, okay, so, that's over. And then, but there they are drinking champagne till the wee hours of the morning at the Trump hotel and saying, oh, we only talked about coronavirus in the meeting. And I just am like, media, be a little more suspect of these people. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen today, with Michigan, but you just go. And by the way, he won by 140,000 votes in Michigan. Like you say, this isn't even close.
It's not a close event.
Right.
And those Michigan legislators, we talked about COVID. These are the same people who for 10 months have been relentlessly attacking the Democratic governor in Michigan.
Yeah.
Because she's trying to stop the spread of COVID. So overnight they show up at the White House and all they care about they don't care about COVID. Come on.
Yeah.
And you're right. So the press treats everything, as a strategy, as a maneuver. Well, bringing no president has ever reached out to state legislators, have them powwow at the White House and think about how we could stop counting votes. I mean, all of it's insane.
Right.
But it's all, the frog in the boiling water for 4 years. And we've just got to this point. Well, that's just Trump being Trump. It's.
And by the way, you made a great point. We they swallow this line about, social media has a, conservative, they have a bias against conservatives. You're like, you said how this clown gets to have a Twitter account remains Jack's colossal disgrace. Everything he tweets is a lie and is dangerous to our democracy, right?
Everything. We've talked about this before. He should have been kicked off Twitter 3 years ago. Everyone who signs up for Twitter has to agree to behavioral guidelines. If you and I did 2 of those 2,000 tweets, we'd be off in a day. They twist themselves into this pretzel, and then they created this whole special category for world leaders, even though there's only one world leader who uses Twitter to lie all the time. I mean, it's just a textbook example of corporate cowardice in the age of Trump. Just does not have the nerve, and it works. And who got hauled up to Capitol Hill last week to complain that they're being too tough on Trump?
Yeah.
CEO of Twitter.
One of my
working the refs works.
One of my favorite things that you talked about, because you're such a good, you have like a photographic memory for this stuff, but the fact that, and it was a fake story, that people in the Obama administration took the W's off the typewriter keys when
the Clinton administration.
Right. But when W came in, and it was a completely fake story, but the media went crazy, like, I'm sabotaging the Bush administration. And this is like, talk about sabotaging a transition. They aren't even allowing a transition to occur, right? And somehow the media still is normalizing this to some degree as a strategy of some sort, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, when the Clintons left the White, people forget in 2000 when the Clintons left. I mean, it was open warfare. That Clinton pardon. They were buying furniture. They were trashing the White House. It was a feeding frenzy on that Democratic White House. And one of the stories was, they trashed the White House. These young kids, they have no respect. There was a year-long federal investigation. I just
about the W's on the typewriters, right?
Yeah, they basically the claim was they graffitied the Oval Office before W came in. There was a year-long. They interviewed hundreds of people, and they determined the wear and tear that was left was normal for any other wear and tear. And so you compare that now. Biden's team can't get information to a public health crisis.
I was just going to say sabotaging not just the transition, American democracy, national security, public health.
People's lives.
Yeah.
People's lives.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. People will die because of this. But again, I go back to the frog in the boiling water. It's all become acceptable. There's still this feeling, well, he'll be gone soon. So, we don't have to talk about his mental instability. Which are all now enraging highlight as, his loss, sociopath, narcissist, a pathological liar. All this stuff is feeding his revenge fantasies.
Yeah.
I mean, just real quick, Mnuchin last week gutted the way the Biden administration can help recover the economy.
Oh, absolutely.
The Fed put out a very unusual statement saying we do not agree. I mean, it's literally a revenge fantasy at this point.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's what the reporting is. That's all that's on his mind now is revenge.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. It's like against America for not voting for him. This. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. This recount in Georgia now, this would be the third one. So it's a Republican Secretary of State and governor, and they just did a hand recount. So Trump's campaign is now asked for a third recount of votes in Georgia.
Masochist.
Right. They insist that, okay, there has to be an honest recount, which has to include signature matching and other vital safeguards. So the Republican Secretary of State said Georgia's voting system has never been more secure or trustworthy. In fact, the signatures on absentee ballot applications and envelopes are required to be checked when they are received. So they just keep making stuff up, right? And now Georgia taxpayers will have to pay for this, right? I think.
Yeah, and then, look, this goes back to Trump's mafia business dealings, right? If when he owed carpenters in Atlantic City money, what did he do? He just dragged it out, hired more lawyers, dragged it out. And eventually the carpenters got 30 cents on the dollars. He's been doing this his whole life.
Yeah.
And that's what he feels like he's going to do with this election.
Speaking of Twitter, he tweeted about Georgia, thousands of fraudulent votes have been found. No. Okay.
And a quick point on about Georgia, and more Republicans are getting nervous about this. What does this mean for the runoff? Yeah. I mean, Trump is telling Republicans in Georgia, your vote doesn't count.
Yes.
The state is a swamp of corruption. Nobody knows what the tally is going to be. How is that going to help Republican voter turnout for these runoff elections? I think it could be an amazing footnote to all of this.
Yeah.
He might end up throwing both those races.
Yeah. Real quick, you wrote a piece, Biden White House should give Fox News the boot. I hear you on this because they literally have a lot of blood on their hands.
Yeah.
About coronavirus. And you're right. We allow them to play this game of, there's real news people and it's only opinion people at night. I mean, it's as an organization, they are poison in the body politic.
Total cancer. And, the Obama administration, we forget, they stood up to Fox News in early 2009. They said, they're a propaganda outlet. They're not a news outlet. And boy, did the White House get buried by the Beltway press, which ran to Fox News' defense. We have friends who work at Fox News. How can Democrats trash Fox News? Today, it's virtually impossible to find anyone who would argue that Fox News is a legitimate news outlet. And I think, lying about a public health crisis in 2020, to me, that breaks that's the straw that breaks the camel back.
Yeah.
And I don't expect that Biden will probably pick this fight, but they would absolutely be within their right to just withdraw those press credentials. Why would you legitimize this nonsense? It's a cancer 24/7, as you say. There is no serious Fox News. There's just not.
Yep.